Hello, welcome back. My name is David,
I'm Ben.
and we just went and saw another movie. This week we went and saw Contagion. Steven Soderbergh. Yeah. So, what did you think?
I really, overall, I have pretty lukewarm feelings about it. I liked a lot of things about it. I thought the acting was all great. But I just feel like it was a really mediocre take on a really interesting premise, and
Yeah.
it just kind of left me not all that excited. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that I could spend some time. Like I said when we got out of the movie, I could watch it again, I think, because I think that there's a lot of stuff under the surface. There's a lot of like commentary, like social commentary going on there, but at the same time, a surface level read of it, I just didn't find it all that interesting.
Yeah, I think I kind of feel the same way. I think the biggest thing that I look for when I go to see a movie is to be entertained. And I was not entertained. Like, after they pulled Gwyneth Paltrow's skull open, like, that was the highlight in the movie for me, and that was in the first 10 minutes. The rest of the movie just kind of went really slowly, and like, I don't know, I found myself more and more in the movie, like I wanted to start riffing this movie, like while we were watching it, because there were so many things that were just like, what? That doesn't make sense. Okay, what's going on? And well, I'll let you go before I start griping some more.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was very there's a lot of tangents with the story that none of them were ever really all that fleshed out, and
or interesting even.
Yeah, I mean, there were some. I got into some of the character stories. I think that there were some interesting directions for the story to take. None of them being like really like obvious ones, like really obvious things that you would have in this kind of crisis movie, you know, like we talked a little bit about Outbreak, and like didn't have so much of that. In a lot of ways it was really realistic, like almost probably to a flaw.
Yeah.
In other ways it was just bent towards the like Steven Soderbergh's like whims, I think. You know, I think his narrative approach is kind of tired, but that's maybe a different conversation.
But I mean, as we talk about like some of the tangential characters, there was the woman that was in China, the French woman that was in China, and then like the one guy who like picks her up and like says, "Oh, I gave you a placebo," and then she runs off into the airport, and you never see her again.
Right.
Like, what is the point?
Well, I think we leave every character at kind of like, there's never a resolution with any one of those characters. Like,
no. Except for maybe Matt Damon and his daughter.
Sort of, but even there, you know, they're still left in a pretty dire situation. I mean, they say the cycle of this disease is going to take a long time to work itself out, and so every character is still kind of left in this what-if situation. And, you know, of course, Lawrence Fishburne's character, he's opened himself right up to being sick.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that there's a lot of every character is kind of left with this open-ended situation. And yeah, some of them are a little too open. The Jude Law character we talked about being a little problematic in terms of like why he was really there, and I get the angle on the whole corporate medicine thing and how they use our, you know, possibly use our fears to get into our wallets and that kind of thing. So I get the why each character was there and what each character was supposed to represent, but I'm not really sure that leaving things so open was, I don't know, it just seemed really unresolved, and maybe that's what the point of it was, to be unresolved. I don't know.
Yeah. But the ending of the movie, like we were talking about the ending, like the last 2 minutes of the movie were not even necessary. And see, I think he was trying to like make some kind of point with the ending about how like the, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow's company inadvertently caused this from like, I don't know, like globalization of, you know, companies into China and all this other stuff. But it just seemed to me like it was like he was trying to say maybe too much about everything and didn't say enough about some very specific things.
Yeah, I think it's I think you're right. I mean, I think it was kind of a broad thing, and a little overly intricate in some ways. And I guess I felt that I kept thinking about Traffic when I was watching it because I really liked that movie, and I think
I did too.
And it's shot and cut in a very similar way, and it's a very similar like stylistic approach, and in some ways the narrative is really similar too, and there are a lot of open ends there. But at the end of that movie, I felt like there was like this real sense of, yeah, we all have these lingering questions and uncertainty about the future, but there's still this like level of like, okay, I saw a complete story here. There was a complete story, a number of complete stories. And there's this real trend that's been going on for a long time of like all these the intersecting storylines that you see like in 21 Grams and movies like that, or Magnolia or something, where there's all these different lives that intertwine. And Contagion's kind of like that, but it's not. And it's nice to see it done in a kind of a fresh way, but it's not enough like Traffic to feel like a whole. To feel like a whole piece.
Well, I think the one thing that I liked about Traffic that is lacking in this film is that the characters were interesting in Traffic.
Mm-hmm.
The characters in this movie were not interesting whatsoever. Like, even your main characters like Lawrence Fishburne and Jude Law, like maybe Jude Law was the most he was maybe the most interesting, but even so, I mean, they just didn't go enough for me. Matt Damon's character was not interesting at all. He was like the most bland thing on the screen.
We never knew anything about him, and we didn't know what he did for a living. We didn't know characters should have livelihoods. They should have jobs. We should know what they do. We should know things about them. My favorite character, and the character that, and this is one thing about this movie that I will gripe on, is that the minimal use of the strongest, most interesting actors.
Yeah.
Like Bryan Cranston being obvious, and I'm sure like he's a real hot name right now, but he's pretty terrific in everything I've seen him in. And when I saw him, I kind of forgot that he was in it, and I was like, oh shit, Bryan Cranston. But he only has like maybe 3 minutes of screen time.
I know.
And then John Hawkes is another one of my favorite character actors.
Yeah, he came up, I was like, oh yeah, he's gonna be in this.
And he's only in two or three scenes and has very little dialogue, but he's the most interesting to watch, and you just get this real sense from him. He's got this really weird charisma that always draws you. You're really drawn to him no matter what part he's in. And I was just really sad that he was, he did. I think his place in the movie was important, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah. And then, so another thing that bothers me about this film was the way that it was edited, because it doesn't suit this type of film, I think. The shots were very just point of fact type of shots for me. There was nothing interesting about the cinematography. It seemed like it was almost a documentary, but it didn't have a documentary feel. And the editing, like there's a part too. John Hawkes, like his character, like in the beginning of the film, he's talking about his son having ADHD, and right away the movie's like jumping back and forth between all these characters. And I said to Brian sitting next to us, I was like, this movie has ADHD. Like it can't focus on anything, and it felt that way through the whole movie.
Well, I think I didn't really bother. I didn't really have a problem overall with the way that the movie like looked and felt. And I can't say I was. There were parts where I was bored, but I wasn't bored the whole time for sure. I wasn't thinking about that as much, I guess. And if I was to watch it again, maybe it would bother me more. But I think my problem is really Soderbergh's approach overall, and it's just like this. He is kind of just this factory now, where he just like, oh, here's an interesting script, and he prides himself on not like having shot lists and not having, just being able to show up to set and like with very little rehearsal or preparation or anything, shoot the actors doing the script. And I just think that there's some level of detriment to there. It really works in some ways, and it works in some of his other movies.
Yeah.
But I think that like I think studios really like this guy because he is independent in that sense, except that he's like, friends with all the richest and most famous people in the world, and like always gets them in his movies, and they always work together on stuff. Like, he's really good friends with Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt's in all his stuff, and so he's great. Studios like him because he gets those people involved. He can make a movie really cheap, and he can just crap it out in like a couple of days. Like, this movie, for all intents and purposes, like set the locations aside, the number of locations aside, he could have shot it in a week.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it feels. It just feels like, and I think that that's a sign of the times in terms of like the level of accessibility that we have to technology to make these movies. But to me, when I go to see a movie like this, like, I want to know that there's more investment than that.
Yeah. So I do want to touch on one thing that I did like about the movie, and that was the acting.
Okay, yeah.
There was nobody in the film who I thought was doing a bad job as an actor. Like, I thought everybody put up a high caliber of performance. And that's what you expect out of a lot of these bigger names, though, too. Like Kate Winslet and like Lawrence Fishburne, Jude Law. All of those guys were great in the movie.
Yeah, and I think Soderbergh did one thing right with the actors, in that he was able to shoot them in a way that made them look very real and very just like normal people.
Yeah.
Like Kate Winslet in particular, like, she's still really beautiful, but there wasn't any real makeup. She looked real pale the whole time, and Gwyneth Paltrow was like not attractive to me. And
no, only the shots with her in the casino were.
Yeah, like, right, like the ones in hindsight, and like the shots with Matt Damon, he's scraggly and scruffy, and even from before all the shit hits the fan, he's scraggly and like gray, and so I liked that. I liked seeing those big, like, untouchable, famous people reduced to this very human level. But at the same time, I feel like if you're gonna cast a movie like that, what is you're gonna get terrific performances, but what is the benefit of having all of that star power in something that's supposed to be so, like, indie?
Yeah.
Why not cast some fresh people?
Or bring some of the lesser known people more to the front.
Or to the front, yeah. Let them have their day in the sun. Because, I mean, God knows, Matt Damon's been in everything, and it's just, yeah, he's really good. He's really, really good, and he does it perfectly. It's pitch perfect, but that movie would have been so differently. I mean, Soderbergh did another movie a few years ago called Bubble, which was like all non-actors, and that was really interesting and fresh. Imagine this movie with all non-actors. So I don't know. I think there's some glitches in his approach.
Well, and unless you have anything else to say, I think we can wrap it up. I don't know if I would recommend this movie. I mean, if you're a big fan of movies, then I would say, yeah, you have to go see it. But if you're the local, Joe Schmo, you can only go see like one movie every month or something, I'd say skip this one. Go watch something else. You'll be much more entertained by just about anything else, I think.
Yeah, I would say I recommend it if you're not expecting what I was hoping for, and I knew I wasn't going to get, which is, like a big blood splattered, like infection, contagion, movie, like some kind of nuclear fallout or something like that, or, some kind of Ebola virus situation. Don't go expecting anything really exciting, because it's very low key. Yeah. Based on that expectation. So, but I would recommend it if you're willing to do kind of a cerebral, slow-paced, thing with like really good acting in it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, tune in next week, and who knows what we'll go see. I don't know. Maybe Drive. I want to see that.
Yeah, Drive looks good. Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.